All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. This is Horn Takes Live. We're on episode 28 of the podcast, streaming live right now on Facebook and YouTube. So check it out. Probably middle of the day on Tuesday is not the greatest time to be doing streaming live streams that people actually watch, but it's what time I have to do a live stream today. So if I can ever get some people to listen to this stuff and watch this stuff, I'll try to be better about picking my times for these streaming events. Today we're going to talk about Texas baseball. It's almost baseball season. Season starts on the 17th of February. It's hard to believe. If you're in Texas right now, odds are it's bitterly cold outside. Odds are if you're anywhere north of the Austin area, you've got some freezing precipitation on the ground. Baseball just seems like not a thing to be talking about right now, but it is. So let's talk a little bit about this Texas Longhorns 2023 baseball season coming up. Again, the season starts the 17th. Texas is unranked nationally, and I don't have a big problem with that. We'll talk about it a little later on, but this is going to be a really, really tough uphill climb for this baseball team and Coach David Pierce. They're picked fourth to finish in the Big 12. Usually the Big 12 is really tough. Normally, if you're picked fourth to win the conference, you're going to be ranked. Obviously, we haven't played a single play of baseball. There hasn't been a single pitch, so who knows how all that ends up turning out. But right now, looking kind of like a lackluster year for the University of Texas baseball team. So let's get into it. But before we get into this team, let's talk a little bit about last year's team. So last year's team was the 2022 preseason number one by D1 Baseball. There's a ton of different groups that rank these teams. I guess D1 Baseball is just as good as any others. So that's what I went with. They were ranked preseason number one last year. They were a couple of plays away from making the College World Series final in 2021. They had a pitching staff that included Pete Hansen, Tristan Stevens, and Witt, all really great pitchers in 2021. In 2021, Hansen had a 1.88 ERA. Tristan Stevens had a 3.31 ERA. And Tanner Witt had a 3.16 ERA. So the pitching staff was put together. The offense was put together. Last year was supposed to be the year that Texas might hoist that trophy one more time. It just didn't come together for them. They ended up runner-up in the Big 12 tournament, which at the time I thought was a really good run for them. These end-of-season sort of Big 12, all these conference championship tournaments, I don't know how important they are. I've actually never looked at it, but I feel like a lot of teams that make it to Omaha don't end up winning their conference championship tournament. So I don't think it's a huge deal, but I thought runner-up was certainly more than I was expecting after watching them kind of finish the season last year in the Big 12. They really cruised through the regional, which they should have. And then they went out to East Carolina for the Super Regional, and East Carolina got up on them 1-0. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, that's it, man. We don't have a third pitcher. Ever since Tanner went down at the very beginning of the season with needing Tommy John surgery, I'm thinking, man, there's no way. And they played a couple of really wild games against Eastern Carolina where the offense really propelled them into the College World Series. And then they got to the College World Series and couldn't hit the ball worth of shit, and they ended up being 2 and done at the College World Series. It wasn't really competitive. I thought they had a slight chance against Notre Dame. They jumped out to what appeared to be they jumped out to a pretty quick little lead against Notre Dame, and then really just did nothing else since that point. And then obviously A&M put a pretty good beat down on them. I believe that game was 10-2. Never really competitive. But we talked about it. They had a really good offense. They had a really good pitching staff. It looked like the year, again, that Texas was going to do it, and they didn't. And now all of that is gone. There are so many question marks with this team. They lost 2/3 of the lineup from that 2022 team. One of the guys they lost, Ivan Melendez, 32 home runs, 94 RBI, Golden Spikes winner. They lost every single infield position player, starter, except for second base. Messenger's gone, Faltini's gone, Ardoin's gone. Mitchell Daly's the only returner there at second base. Two of the starting outfielders gone. Hodo and Staley, they're out. Kennedy, who seems like he's been at Texas for, I don't know, he had an older brother that played at Texas, and that's probably one of the reasons why I feel like Eric Kennedy has been at Texas for so long, is because there's been a Kennedy at Texas for a lot of years over the past several years. But he decided to come back. So 2/3 of the lineup, that's a lot of production gone, right? Check out these numbers. This is the offensive production lost from last year's team. And by the way, last year's team offensively was an absolute juggernaut. I think they probably set every major offensive record for the University of Texas. I know they surpassed the home run record for the University of Texas. But their pitching just wasn't good, and it wasn't good. It wasn't consistent in the starting three, and then the bullpen was just absolutely – the bullpen was absolutely fucking dreadful last year is really the only way to describe it. It was bad. They lost so many midweek games last year because they just could not pitch. They gave up tons of home runs out of the bullpen last year. And again, the starting pitching saw periods where you were just like, what the hell? Are these the same guys from last year? And if you look at the numbers, like the ERAs outside of Pete Hansen's basically doubled. But Tristan Stevens wasn't that much worse this year than the year before, or last year than the year before. But just the timeliness of things. Anyway, offensive production lost. Home runs, 105. 105 home runs instantly out of the lineup. That's 82% of the home runs they hit last year. 400 runs batted in. Gone. That's 79% of the runs batted in they had last year as a team. 1,726 at-bats. 72% of the at-bats last year. Gone. Pitching loss. We talked about Pete Hansen, Tristan Stevens. They weren't as good last year as they were the year before. The year they almost made it into that College World Series final. But they were still pretty good. Now they're gone. So who's coming back? We talked a little bit about him a little bit earlier. Mitchell Daly at second base. He hit .237 with 4 home runs, 37 RBI. Not a huge offensive guy. He's definitely going to have to improve at the plate if Texas wants to have a solid type year. Dylan Campbell, this guy's a utility guy. He's played outfield. He's played third base. He actually represents the power that's coming back for the University of Texas this year. He hit .267, had 10 home runs and 29 RBI last year. So not a lot of, I mean, I guess the home run number is pretty good. 10 home runs is pretty good. But not a ton of RBI. Not a great batting average. Decent batting average. Eric Kennedy out in the outfield. He hit .300 with 7 home runs, 29 RBI. I think the biggest thing Eric Kennedy brings to the game is his speed. This guy, if you guys haven't watched Texas baseball and don't know who Eric Kennedy is, you're not a Texas fan probably. But secondly, you should tune into a few games this year and watch Eric Kennedy. This guy, I've seen him in multiple games lay down bunts for singles. And I'm not talking about like he put it in the exact right, perfect spot where there just wasn't a play. He does that very well, but he has great speed. He can steal you base hits in the infield. He can steal bases in the on the base path. Really good player and underrated player. That actually last year, from a power perspective, those 7 home runs was kind of a breakout type deal for him. Maybe he can improve a little bit more on that. He's the leadoff hitter, obviously, so not a lot of RBI chances for Kennedy. And then you got a couple of guys that have come back that played a little bit last year. There's several guys on the roster that were on the roster last year. A lot of them had a few at-bats, but nothing substantial. But these next 2 guys, Ace Whitehead, he's an outfield/pitcher at Lampasas, Texas. He had a really good average in his at-bats last year, 556 with 2 RBI. And I don't remember how many at-bats he had. It wasn't like he just had 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that. He had probably around 20, 25 ABs last year. And then you got Jack O'Dowd, infielder. He's a transfer from Vanderbilt last year. He hit .231 with 1 home run and 5 RBIs. And that's pretty much it from an experience factor. Again, there were several guys that are on the roster now that were also on the roster last year, but just didn't get a lot of at bats and a lot of time out in the field. And then Tanner Witt, obviously, was the Sunday guy going into the season last year. Enormously talented guy, 6'4", 215, really live arm. He's throwing mid-90s last year. Could really, in the year before, could really overpower hitters with his fastball. Had really good off-speed stuff. I don't know how he's going to respond to that Tommy John surgery. I don't know what to expect from him. I don't even know where he's at in his rehabilitation. Part of me doubts that he comes in and throws. I mean, he may not even throw until conference this year. I don't know. I don't really know what the recovery for a UCL is. My assumption is it's somewhat similar to an ACL. So you're looking at, I don't know, like say 8 to 12 months minimum. Obviously, he was hurt, early in the 22 campaign. Didn't really pitch at all last year. I think he actually hurt himself kind of warming up before one of those games in the college baseball showdown, the Sunday game. It just cut loose on him. I'm trying to remember. I don't think he even pitched. I think he actually did it warming up before the game. And then Lucas Gordon, who kind of slipped into that third starter role mid to late season last year. He had a 3.05 ERA. He was 7-2, opponent batting average of 224. He actually had, a really good season for not expecting to be in that position. And it took Texas a while to work through some guys to figure out who's our third starter going to be. So again, just you look at who's coming back, and you got to sit there and go, man, this is going to be a rough year. Now, who knows? I know they signed a really good recruiting class. David Pierce did a pretty good job in the transfer portal, picked up a lot of pitching. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Let's talk about this schedule. I don't know. I know the RPI ranks things, and, as we get further into the season, you'll see those numbers change a little bit, and you'll start to really see who the best teams are. But if you just look at the schedule and where they're ranked today, it's a pretty tough schedule for Texas. They start out with number 8 Arkansas. Literally very first pitch of the season is going to be against Arkansas at that college baseball showdown in Arlington, which they don't put on TV, which is it pisses me off. You got to watch it on like Flow TV or some shit I don't want to subscribe to. I don't know why they do that. I imagine most people don't watch those games, sadly, because they're really good matchups. Big 12, SEC. I think you look at the Big 12 and the SEC in baseball, and you kind of have to say, historically, these are like the 2 best conferences in baseball. And it's awesome that they set up this preseason deal where you get to kick off the season and watch a bunch of good SEC teams and a bunch of good Big 12 teams play each other. But it's fucking stupid. You can't even watch it on TV. I digress. So they got number 8 Arkansas, first pitch on Friday. And then Sunday they've got number 10 Vandy. February 28th, number 1 LSU comes to Austin. At least they get them at home. Texas had good luck against LSU at home. I think, was it 2 years ago? Might have been the COVID year. LSU came in highly ranked, and Texas swept them. Anyway. Then March 24th, you got Texas Tech coming to Austin to open up Big 12 play. Right after that series, you get number 5 Texas A&M during a midweek down in College Station. The next weekend, you go up to number 9 Oklahoma State to play them in Stillwater. And then you're at number 15 TCU about a month later. And again, who knows what happens? Who knows how all these rankings will ebb and flow? Some of these guys may drop a little bit. There may be some surprise teams in the Big 12 that come. One of the teams, and I don't know how much they lost, but one of the teams that gave Texas fits last year was Kansas State. Which, by the way, I didn't have this platform last summer. So I'm a huge baseball guy, and I will do a lot of talking about Texas baseball throughout this season. I had never seen Kansas State's home field, and they beat Texas in a series 2-3, and they might have swept the series. They took the series from Texas. They play on a softball field. If you hit a pop fly in Kansas State, the ball is going out. As long as it's between the poles, that's a home run. And I'm being serious, man. That is a small-ass stadium. I think it's got like a chain link fence in the outfield. It looks like a pony league field or something. I don't know what that's all about, but they should get K-State at home, so it shouldn't matter. But it was crazy to me how a team that could hit as many home runs as Texas did last year couldn't get a ball out of there. And they had this kid, Kansas State had this one kid that just hit a pop fly every time. It was a damn home run. Anyway, I digress again. So the schedule's tough. There's not a lot of people coming back. What should we expect from the 2023 version of the Texas Longhorns baseball team? And the answer I have is who the hell knows? I have no idea what to expect. I think David Pierce is a pretty good baseball coach. I think he's got a pretty good staff. They have some talent that's coming back. My assumption would be that the talent they brought in through the portal and through the recruiting class is good. But, man, is it going to be young. I think David Pierce has his work cut out for him this season. Pitching questions. Again, the bullpen was absolute shit last year. And you need that. You need guys that you can depend on to come out of the – last season, if we got to the bullpen – and I don't know what the actual percentages were, but I'll tell you how I felt as a fan. I felt like if we had to go to the bullpen really early in a game, we were fucked. 50-50 at best. Our closer couldn't close. It's bad when your closer has to – and I'm not trying to speak ill of this kid at all. I can't even remember his name. Short, stocky dude, looked like he was a power lifter. Had an amazing season the year before. Came into 2022 and just melted down. He wasn't throwing fastballs. He couldn't locate his fastball. I don't know how you have a guy that's your closer that can't locate a fastball. He was throwing off-speed pitches, speeding guys' bats up. And then when he made a mistake with a fastball, boom. It just wasn't very live, his arm. And he's gone too. So like the best, worst guy out of the bullpen is gone. They did add some arms, and I don't know much about these guys or where they're projected, whether they're starter-type guys or bullpen-type guys. David Shaw is a big left-hander from right. And by the way, these guys are all big, and I mean big. Like Charlie Hurley and David Shaw are like 6'7", 6'8" each. One's a right-hander out of USC, Charlie Hurley. Left-hander from Rice, David Shaw. And then Heston Toll is another big right-hander that transferred from Arkansas. And again, I don't know a lot about these guys. I know you look at those three schools they came from and they're traditional baseball powerhouse type programs. So I imagine they're pretty good players. We'll find out, hopefully. Hopefully they can come in. You know what I miss? I always used to bitch when Augie Garrido was the coach, and we would win games like 3-1, 2-1, 4-2, 4-3, like all these real tight games. And it looked like there was nobody on Texas's team that could score a single freaking lick, couldn't hit for shit. Just weren't very offensive, explosive teams. And now we have that in Austin. And I really wish we had some pitching back. And I don't know if it's true that you can't have both. And if you look at traditionally the teams that have won the College World Series lately, they're all offensive teams. Not to say that they didn't have pitching. Some of those teams had really good pitching. The defense has stayed really consistent for Texas. The pitching has fallen off. So hopefully he can find some guys that can pitch. Hopefully some of these guys that have come into the program can pick up the offensive end of college baseball quickly. I think baseball is one of those, and this is a tangent. We're going off on a tangent. I think college baseball is one of those sports where it doesn't matter if you don't have a ton of experience at that level. Like, college football, when you go from high school to college football, you're playing against basically the best player you played against in high school, except there's 11 of them now on the other side of the ball from you, and it's every fucking snap, and it's every week. And then there's like these guys, these generational type guys that you occasionally run up against. So like the jump from high school to college in football is huge. In baseball, these kids play so much baseball today. And these kids that are going to Texas and Oklahoma and all these SEC schools and, all the major programs for baseball, these kids have played a ton of baseball, and it's all summer baseball, and it's all against the best of the best for their age group in the country. So when you go to, it's not like, if I'm in, I don't know, let's say I go to high school at Mount Pleasant, Texas, because that's where I went to high school. I'm not seeing 95 miles an hour much, if ever. And I'm certainly not seeing it multiple times. And I'm not seeing a ton of guys, if I'm a pitcher, that are raking constantly. But you do see that in summer ball. So these leagues these kids play in, it's almost like their high school seasons aren't even that important for their development and for where they go to play baseball, whether that's pros or college or junior college, whatever the case may be. All of those decisions, with rare exceptions, I feel like happen because of summer baseball. So, all long tangent, now we're to the point of it is that these kids, even though they're freshmen and they're transfers that maybe haven't played a lot, they've seen it. They've seen 90 miles an hour. They've seen really good stuff off the bump. They've seen really good hitters if they're pitchers. Texas signed a good recruiting class. I believe they were certainly top 10, maybe top 5 recruiting class. It's hard to find a lot of information on that. And then again, we talked about it. They brought in some transfer portal guys, definitely pitching, but they also got some position players. They signed another guy from USC, really guys from all over. But I don't know. I don't know what to think. I mean, I got to look at the season and say it's probably going to be disappointing from a Texas Longhorn baseball fan perspective. I think College World Series is probably out the window. I just don't know. I think when you get in the postseason like that, that's where experience does come in. Individually, you can battle, right? If I'm at the plate, I'm a freshman, I can battle with this college kid because I've seen it before. But there's like this whole mindset about winning in the postseason. And I don't know if you can build that over the course of one season. It's probably not impossible. But I think this team will have to end up being ultra talented, and I'm talking about the young guys and the transfer guys. And it's going to really have to develop quickly. It's certainly going to have the test. They're certainly going to have played some really, really good teams and faced some really, really good players by the time they get to postseason. I mean, a question to ask is postseason even like a realistic expectation for this team? I don't know. I mean, I think if you're looking at a college football team and you say they lost 66% of their starters and damn near 80% of their offense, I think you're going to say that team probably is not going to compete for anything, and certainly not a bid in the postseason. Now, obviously, 64 teams go to the postseason in baseball, so you don't have to be as good in baseball as you do in football to make the postseason, but the point still stands. So we'll see. I'm as intrigued to watch this season and learn about this team as I am dreading the fact that I don't think they're going to be that good. Which is okay. Sometimes you got to take your lumps, right? Look at TCU. They took their lumps all season last year. Ended up having a pretty magical season in football this year. So we'll see. They kick it off. First pitch is February 17th. They've got some kind of alumni something or other, or orange and white game the weekend before that, I think. Real quick before we end the show, Texas basketball. So we haven't talked a lot about Texas basketball since Chris Beard got fired officially. They're 18-4. They've lost a couple games, but they've lost to really good teams. They dropped a tough one on the road at Tennessee. I think Tennessee was ranked 4th at the time. I believe they're ranked 2nd this week. And they didn't really look that competitive in that game. They looked like the moment was too big for them. Lots of turnovers, lots of just unforced errors, bad shots, not making shots. Talked earlier in the season about this backcourt that Texas has and how, I mean, at the time, it was an elite backcourt. You legitimately had 3 of the 4 guys with the most playing time at that guard positions that were killing it. And Arterio Morris showed flashes. And when I say killing it, I mean consistently. Tyrese Hunter has gone AWOL. Now, he did have a okay game last night against Baylor. Baylor came to town, ranked 11th. Texas ranked 10th. Texas pulls out a win, 76-71 over Baylor. And I'll tell you what the difference in that game was. There wasn't a ton of turnovers. And they didn't get brutally out-rebounded. Tennessee, I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was bad. Tennessee out-rebounded the shit out of Texas. And part of that is, rebounding is like, there's a lot of factors to it, right? There's, seeing the ball bounce. Where's the ball going to end up? there's obviously the physical nature of it, of, getting your body between your opponent and where you think that ball is going to end up. And then I think there's height and length, which are physical attributes, but you can't help them, right? You can't make yourself taller, and you can't make your arms longer. And Texas just looked really undersized against Tennessee. And it showed up on the rebounds ticker of the box score. But they rebounded pretty good last night. This Texas team is really, really experienced, and it's really, really talented. And if they can stay out of their own way and find a way to get some consistent production from their, consistent. I mean, they need two guards every night that can score. And that's been a problem. And it's been a huge problem in their losses. It's kind of forced the front court to pick up and do some more things offensively, though. It might pay dividends come tournament time. If you can be really good in the front court and really good in the back court at the same time, you're tough offensively. But Texas right in the middle of a pretty tough stretch for basketball. They got Kansas State at Kansas State, and then they go to Lawrence to play KU. That's the next two games for the University of Texas. Someone said, there's 4 games coming up. This is a tough stretch. What do you see? I said losses. And I didn't mean they'd lose all of them. I just meant, Kansas State, how in the world do you score triple digits and lose? By damn near, I think it was double digits they lost to Kansas State by after they scored 100 points. And I don't know. I haven't seen K-State play outside of that except for a few short glances. I don't know if they're really that good or if that was just, holy shit, we just can't miss that. I know they couldn't miss that night. So anyway, and KU is KU. Talked about it, the guard plays. I think Texas lives and dies by the guard play. And so if they can handle the ball without turning the ball over, if they can play good defense on the ball, which, again, they did really well last night against a good opponent, and if they can score and consistently score and get some help from that front court, like I said, they got a pretty decent shot at being a good team. They're 18-4. It's hard to say they're struggling at 18-4. Who the hell is struggling at 18-4, right? And you look at all the just stuff that doesn't have anything to do with basketball that this team's had to deal with Chris Beard being suspended and then fired. I don't know. But they don't look the same to me. They don't, and it could be just that they're playing, the Big 12. They just had this Big 12 SEC shootout thing or whatever the hell they call it. They do it every single year. They match up Big 12 versus SEC teams, and they all play on one Saturday. And the Big 12 pretty much dominated it. The Big 12's one of the worst teams in the Big 12 absolutely curb stomped Alabama, who at the time was the number 2 team in the country, certainly the number 1 team in the SEC at the time. And they just absolutely beat the shit out of them. 30 points. Close to 30. I think 30-point lead at one point. I think the game ended up being 26, 28-point victory, something like that. So the Big 12 is a really good conference. So maybe that's what's showing up. I just don't like the unforced errors. I don't like seeing Tyrese Hunter just really struggle to score. I don't know what happened. Earlier in the season, he couldn't miss, and now I think it's in his head. So I don't know. There's a long way to go for the basketball team. They can certainly compete for the Big 12 championship. They can certainly get into the tournament. They will get into the tournament. Just really, what seed will they be in the tournament? The last bracketology I saw was three seed or something like that. definitely have the pieces in place to make a run. We'll see if they make a run. You guys subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about the podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Horn Takes. Find me on Twitter at Horn Takes or Horn Takes Podcast. Find me on YouTube at Horn Takes, where this stream will be. Find me on TikTok at Horn Takes Podcast. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com. Questions, comments, concerns. I love them all. Hook 'em.